I never thought my 40th work anniversary would feel like walking into a room everyone else had rehearsed for, but me. 40 years. That's an entire lifetime spent in the same building, in the same hallways, fixing the same problems before anyone noticed they existed. I wasn't the loudest or the smartest, just the one who showed up every day even when life didn't. And maybe that's why the whispers hit differently this time. It started 3 weeks before the date. First, a few comments in the break room. Just wait, Mark. Something big is coming. Then the glances, those quick, knowing looks people try to hide but never fully can. Some people grinned when they saw me. Others grew unusually polite, like they were silently apologizing in advance for something they couldn't say out loud. I'd worked with these people for decades. I knew their tells the way I knew the hum of an old fluorescent light. Subtle, persistent, impossible to ignore once you catch it. My boss, Parker, was the worst at pretending. He'd stop by my desk and ask how I was feeling lately, drawing out the word feeling like he was a doctor delivering bad news. Then he'd slap my shoulder with this oversized, fake-friendly smile and say, "Big year for you, buddy. Just wait." I didn't ask questions. I never do. I've never believed in taking a hint and making it someone else's problem. I just logged the moment, put it on the same mental shelf where I stored late-night shifts, canceled weekends, and the 100 times I covered for people who called in sick after a football night. Still, the tension lingered. On Monday of that week, something shifted. The office went quiet when I walked in. Not silent, but tight. Like everyone exhaled at once the moment I passed them. When I reached my desk, I found a card lying on top of my keyboard. No envelope, no handwriting, just a printed message inside. To 40 years of dedication. It wasn't signed by anyone. It wasn't even written with the right font the company usually used. It felt rushed, like a placeholder. Half the office acted like they didn't see it. The other half waited for me to react, as if I was supposed to burst into tears on the spot. I placed it in my drawer and moved on. My job has never been about applause, and still the comments continued. Just wait, man. Something big is coming. You're gonna freak out when you see it. 40 years, dude. Not everyone gets something like that. Their voices always dipped on the word, that. One afternoon, Jenna from HR approached me while I was filling out a maintenance ticket. She's always been friendly, too friendly in that way HR tries to be when they're preparing to deliver news wrapped in corporate language. She leaned against the cubicle wall. "Mark, are you excited?" I shrugged. "Should I be?" She smiled, but her eyes flicked down the hallway toward Parker's office before she answered. "Well, something big is coming." That was the moment the phrase finally stopped sounding celebratory and started feeling like a warning. I've spent most of my adult life smoothing over tiny cracks before they widened. That's what people like me do. We prevent disasters quietly, invisibly. We don't announce ourselves. We don't brag. We take care of things. But the more they talked, the more obvious it became that this time I was the thing being taken care of. On Wednesday, I walked into the break room to find the entire team standing around the counter. They weren't chatting or laughing. They were waiting. And when I entered, they all turned to look at me with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Morning, Mark," someone said. The room smelled like stale coffee and tension. Parker strode in seconds later, a little too energized for 8 a.m. "Everyone ready for Friday?" he asked the room, not me. A few people nodded. A few forced out awkward little cheers. No one looked me in the eye. I'd seen this exact behavior only once before, 10 years ago, when they pushed out a guy named Harris, under the guise of a surprise celebration. He walked into a cake and balloons and walked out unemployed by the end of the day. They framed it as a retirement party. He was 61. I'm 63. So that night, sitting at home in the quiet, I caught myself staring at my coffee table for a long time. 40 years. I've missed birthdays, funerals, holidays. I've taken calls at hospital bedsides. I've crawled under machinery on Christmas Eve so production wouldn't stall on the 26th. And I didn't complain. Not once. Because I thought loyalty meant something. But something about this forced cheerfulness, these staged half-smiles, the empty card, kept scratching at me like a splinter working its way deeper. The next morning I got in early. Before the lights, before the whispers. I walked past the conference room and noticed something I wasn't supposed to see. A layout of chairs, a stack of papers on a clipboard, and Parker's laptop open to a slideshow titled Legacy Shift Proposal Friday. Legacy Shift. They'd really come up with a pretty name for it. I closed the door quietly before anyone arrived. My hands didn't shake. I didn't get angry. I just realized, with a strange, calm clarity, that whatever they were planning for me on Friday had nothing to do with appreciation and everything to do with disposal. The whispers continued all day. The smiles stretched thinner. And every time someone said, "Just wait, Mark?" I felt something old inside me loosen, something I'd held on to for far too long. By the time Thursday ended, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was paying attention, and I could feel it. Whatever was coming on Friday wasn't a celebration. It was an ambush dressed as gratitude. Friday, 9 a.m., they finally showed me what something big meant. It started with a calendar invite the night before. Celebration and strategic discussion. Mark's 40 years. No description, just 30 minutes blocked off, mandatory, in Conference Room B. I stared at the words celebration and strategic sitting that close together and knew one of them was lying. When I walked in, the room was already set. A sheet cake with white frosting and blue letters sat on the side table. "Thank you, Mark." The exclamation point looked tired. A row of plastic plates and forks lined up next to it like an afterthought. There were a few balloons, sagging slightly. Someone had tried, just not very hard. My coworkers filtered in one by one, each holding that same uneasy half-smile they'd been practicing all week. Parker stood near the screen at the front of the room, hands clasped, body angled like a motivational speaker waiting for his cue. Jenna from HR was in the corner, holding a folder against her chest like a shield. "Mark!" Parker boomed when he saw me, too loud for a room this small. "Our man of the hour!" He clapped once and a few people joined in. Thin, scattered applause that died faster than it started. I nodded, took a seat near the middle, not at the head of the table where an empty chair sat like a prop. I wasn't going to sit on a throne they'd built over a trapdoor. Parker cleared his throat. "Well, thank you all for coming. As you know, this week marks a very special milestone. Our friend and colleague Mark has been with the company for 40 years. He glanced at me. 40. That's older than some of you in this room. Nervous chuckles. I could have recited this script myself. He went on about loyalty, dedication, institutional knowledge, words that sound like compliments, but land like eulogies. Halfway through, he clicked to a slide titled Transition Planning and Knowledge Transfer with my ID photo on it. There it was. No confetti, no surprise. Jenna shifted in her chair. A few coworkers looked down at the table. They knew. Maybe not the details, but enough. Parker smiled wider. We want to make sure Mark's legacy here is preserved and honored as we, evolve as an organization. So today we're excited to discuss how we can, together, support Mark in entering the next chapter of his life. Next chapter. That's what they call it when they're done turning pages on you. He clicked again. A slide appeared with a neat little timeline. Q1, knowledge transfer. Q2, reduced hours. Q3, advisory role. Q4, full retirement. My name was on every arrow. The dates were already filled in. They hadn't asked me a single question. I felt my jaw tighten, but my voice stayed flat. When did we decide this? Parker laughed a little too quickly. Well, Mark, we've been thinking about your workload for a while now. You've earned the right to slow down. We just wanted to package it in a way that reflects how much we value you. How long have these slides been ready? I asked. His eyes flickered for just a second. We've been preparing in anticipation of your anniversary, of course. I looked at the dates in the bottom corner of the file. Created 2 months ago, modified last week. They'd been planning my exit while they were telling me to just wait. Jenna opened her folder and slid a small stack of papers toward me. This outlines the transition plan and a retirement package we're able to offer if you agree to the timeline, she said carefully. There are some incentives for making it official now, while we can still plan ahead. There it was. The big thing, not a bonus, not a promotion, not even a plaque with my name spelled right. A pre-written goodbye. I flipped through the pages. Reduced hours at a lower rate. No guarantee of staying on as advisory. A suggestion that if I didn't sign, there might be departmental restructuring affecting my position. It was polite blackmail dressed in bullet points. Someone at the table shifted. Someone else coughed. I realized everyone was watching me not like a colleague, but like a test subject. Would the old guy cry? Would he rage? Would he joke it off and make it easier on everyone? I set the papers down slowly. That's a lot to absorb, I said. My voice sounded calm, even to me. And nobody thought to talk to me before writing my future for me. Parker gave that practiced frown he reserves for difficult conversations. Mark, no one is pushing you out. This is an opportunity. We're trying to honor you here. Honor. That word again. I looked around the room. Faces I had covered for. People whose mistakes I fixed at 2 a.m. without logging overtime. The guy whose project I saved by working an entire weekend so he could go to his kid's recital. The woman I trained from scratch when they dumped half my responsibilities on her without warning. None of them met my eyes. You're calling it retirement, I said quietly, but it reads like a layoff with cake. A couple of people flinched. Parker's smile tightened at the edges. That's a harsh way to look at it. It's the way the numbers look at it, I replied, tapping the papers. You say I've earned the right to slow down, but you've already decided how I do it, when I do it, and how much less I'm worth while it happens. Silence settled over the table then, the heavy kind that doesn't mean reflection, just guilt with nowhere to go. And then silence, the kind that means something's gone wrong. I closed the folder. I'm not signing anything today. Parker blinked. That wasn't in his script. Well, of course, you can review it at home. Talk it over with family. Take your time. I said I'm not signing anything today, I repeated, and I won't have this conversation again in front of an audience. That was my small act of revenge. Right there. Not flipping the table. Not storming out. Just refusing to play my assigned role in their little ceremony. I stood up. The cake sat untouched on the side table. Frosting starting to sweat under the fluorescent lights. Aren't you going to at least cut the cake? Someone muttered near the back, trying to break the tension. I looked at it. 40 years reduced to sugar, cheap frosting, and a timeline someone else had drawn. No, I said. You all go ahead. You already had your celebration. You just forgot to invite me to the part where you planned it. I walked out. No applause this time. No backpats. Just the sound of my own footsteps and the faint buzz of the lights overhead. In the hallway, Jenna caught up with me. Mark, wait, she said, lowering her voice. I mean, most of this was Parker's initiative. He said you'd be thrilled to have time to yourself. He said he'd been hinting at it with you for months. I remembered his fake concerned questions. How are you feeling? Thinking about slowing down? Not conversations. Setups. Tell Parker, I said, that if he wants me gone, he can say it without a slideshow. Her face tightened with something that looked dangerously close to sympathy. Just look over the documents, okay? Don't do anything rash. I nodded once and walked back to my desk. My hands were steady as I sat down. I placed the folder in my drawer, right next to that unsigned card. For the rest of the day, people stopped by my cubicle in ones and twos. Little phrases dropped like loose change. It's just how things are right now, you know. At least they're offering something. Maybe it's not so bad. Time to relax, right? Not one of them said, "This is wrong." Not one of them asked what I wanted. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with the folder open in front of me, highlighter in hand, I realized something I should have seen years ago. I'd spent 4 decades making sure everyone else could sleep at night, covering, fixing, swallowing. That night, I stopped being the hero. Because as I read those pages more carefully, line by line, I noticed something Parker probably assumed I'd be too tired or too grateful to catch. Certain clauses, certain references to prior agreements, and historic informal arrangements that had nothing to do with retirement at all. They had everything to do with the overtime they'd never paid, the temporary responsibilities they'd piled on me without updating my title, the safety shortcuts Parker pushed through and asked me to sign off on with a wink. I closed the folder again. They thought Friday was the big event. They thought the humiliation ended at cake and a signature. But that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night, but not because I was angry. Anger burns out fast. What I felt was colder, steadier, like something finally clicked into place after years of sitting crooked. I'd spent decades believing loyalty was a shield. Turns out it was a leash, and Parker had been holding the other end the whole time. By morning, the office felt different. People kept glancing at me like they were waiting for a meltdown or a surrender. I gave them neither. I clocked in at 7:58, sat down, opened my drawer, and pulled out the folder with the retirement package. I reread the clauses slowly, this time not as an employee being pushed out, but as someone evaluating evidence. Around 9:15, Parker's assistant appeared beside my desk. "Parker would like to speak with you in his office," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear as if that could hide the discomfort in her voice. "Of course," I said, standing. She expected hesitation, maybe fear. She got neither. As I walked toward Parker's office, I noticed the way conversations paused behind me. A few doors cracked open. Someone pretended to refill a mug just to watch me pass. It felt like moving through a hallway lined with spectators, not coworkers. Parker was waiting inside with the blinds half closed, creating those fake dramatic stripes of light across the drawer. He gestured toward a chair. "Mark, let's talk like adults," he began. "Yesterday didn't go quite how I hoped." "I thought it went exactly how you planned," I said, sitting down. He forced a laugh. "Look, if you're upset—" "I'm not upset." He hesitated. He didn't expect that. Upset people are easier to maneuver. Calm people are problems. "Good," he finally said. "Then let's move forward. Jenna told me you wanted time to review the documents, and of course that's reasonable. But we do need to make progress. Leadership is asking for finalized timelines." "Leadership," I repeated. "Meaning you." His jaw flexed, barely noticeable. "Mark, this is for your benefit. You've earned the chance to step back. We're trying to help you transition with dignity." There was that word again, dignity. They love to use it right before taking something from you. I placed the folder on his desk. I reviewed everything. "And there's a problem?" He leaned forward slightly. "Which part?" "All of it." Before he could respond, I flipped to a page near the back. "This clause references historical informal agreements with management." "That's interesting, especially because those agreements include safety overrides you ordered and asked me to approve." His expression changed, not dramatically, just a tiny freeze at the edges. I'd seen that look before, when equipment fails during an inspection and someone realizes the mistake wasn't anonymous after all. "Mark," he said slowly, "those were verbal requests made during unique circumstances. They were temporary." "No," I cut in gently. "They were violations." He blinked. "Twice. And this part here," I continued, tapping the second page, "mentions compensation for accumulated flexible time, not tracked formally. That's another pretty phrase for unpaid overtime, which is odd, because you personally approved those hours as voluntary." That wasn't anger in his eyes now. It was calculation. "Mark," he began carefully, "let's not turn a misunderstanding into a conflict. If you want the package adjusted, we can revisit the numbers. That won't fix the real issue." "What issue?" "You tried to push me out before someone else pushes you out." His face stiffened. The room suddenly felt smaller. I'm not sure what you think you have, he said quietly. I have records, I replied. Emails. Memos you forgot you copied me on. Work orders you signed. Time logs with your handwriting on them. Everything you've been sweeping under the rug for the last 10 years, it's all sitting in my home office. Sorted, tagged, dated. He swallowed. Mark, listen. You asked me to sign responsibility for those decisions. Then you wrapped it up in a cake and called it a celebration. He straightened in his chair, shoulders pulling back like a man preparing for a fight he didn't train for. What are you planning to do with this information? I haven't decided yet. That was the truth, and he felt it. But I can tell you what I'm not going to do, I added. I'm not fading out quietly because it's convenient for you. Parker forced a smile again, but it didn't land. Okay, I see what this is. You're trying to negotiate. We can do that. Let's talk numbers, extended benefits, a bonus. You still don't get it, I said. I'm not negotiating. I'm informing. He went still, and then something shifted, like a thread snapping. His voice turned sharper. Mark, if you escalate this, you'll make things worse for yourself. HR follows protocol. Leadership protects its own. You'll drown in paperwork before anything hits a desk that matters. I won't need HR, I said softly. He frowned. What does that mean? I leaned back. It means there are agencies whose entire job is investigating exactly this kind of misconduct. Fraud, labor violations, safety breaches, all the things you asked me to sign off on. His knuckles tightened on the desk. That would hurt a lot of people, he said. It already did. He stared at me for a long moment. The ticking of the cheap wall clock felt louder than usual. Finally, he exhaled. What do you want, Mark? There it was. The real question, the one he never expected to ask. I could have asked for a payout, an apology, a public acknowledgement. But none of that would land where it needed to. What I wanted was simpler. I want you, I said, to stop using my loyalty as a shield for your shortcuts. He shifted. And if I say no, you won't. Something flickered in his eyes, fear or recognition or both. That's when the door opened. Jenna stepped inside hesitantly. Sorry, am I interrupting? Parker turned sharply. We're in the middle of something. She looked between us. I know. That's why I'm here. Compliance just emailed me. There's been a request to pull maintenance records for the last 5 years. They want everything by Monday. Parker's face drained of color. Jenna continued softer. They said someone contacted the anonymous hotline last night. Parker's eyes snapped to mine. I didn't blink, but I hadn't contacted anyone. Not yet. He looked like a man who had stepped on a staircase that wasn't there. Jenna cleared her throat. They said the report referenced safety overrides, fraudulent approvals, and an employee being pressured into retirement. Parker didn't speak. He couldn't. I stood. It seems, I said, that the company is finally paying attention. Jenna watched me with something like awe, maybe the first honest look I'd received in years. As I reached the door, I felt the entire room behind me shift, like gravity had changed direction. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. Compliance moved faster than gossip. By Monday morning, the office felt like it was holding its breath. People weren't whispering anymore. They were avoiding eye contact altogether. The usual morning chatter at the coffee machine died into short nods and the clink of mugs. A notice went out. Scheduled interviews with the compliance department staggered over the next 2 days. Mandatory. No exceptions. I was on the list, of course. So was Parker. When I walked into the small conference room where they'd set up, there were 2 people waiting, one from internal compliance, one from the outside firm they'd brought in. No balloons this time. Just a recorder on the table and a legal pad with my name at the top. Thank you for coming in, Mr. Hale, the woman from the firm said. We just want to clarify a few things about your role here and your responsibilities over the last several years. She didn't start with the retirement package. She started with the work orders, the safety overrides, the temporary exceptions that never quite got documented. I answered every question truthfully. I didn't dramatize. I didn't soften anything either. "Did you feel pressured to approve these decisions?" she asked at one point, sliding a printed email across the table. It was one of Parker's. "Need this signed off ASAP, Mark. Don't hold us up with technicalities." "Yes," I said. "I did." "Did you receive additional compensation for the extra hours you worked implementing them?" "No." "Did you ever express concern?" "Many times, verbally, sometimes in writing." "Who did you express it to?" I looked down at the page. There were signatures there, not just Parker's. "Mostly to my direct manager," I said, "and anyone else who was in the room." The interviews ran all day. People came out looking pale, sweating, or furious. A few stopped by my desk like they wanted to say something, then thought better of it. I didn't chase them. That afternoon, as I was heading to the parking lot, Jenna caught up with me again. "Mark," she said breathlessly, "do you have a minute?" "Sure." She looked around, making sure we were alone. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else." I waited. "I was the one who called the hotline," she said quietly. "Last week, before the celebration, I'd been collecting things for a while. Emails, notes. I just didn't know how to move without blowing up my own job," she swallowed. "When I saw that retirement plan with your name written all over it, I couldn't pretend it was just policy anymore." I was quiet for a moment, letting that land where it deserved. "Thank you," I said. She blinked, like she expected anger instead. "You're not mad?" "You did what you should have done," I said. "A little late for me. Right on time for yourself." Her shoulders dropped. "They're not just looking at Parker," she added. "They're looking at the whole chain. There's going to be fallout." "There always is," I said. "This time it's just falling where it belongs." The rest moved quickly in the way slow things finally do once they start. By the end of the week, Parker was on leave pending investigation. His name disappeared from internal memos. Meetings that used to belong to him were suddenly team-led. Somebody had to step in for the projects he'd been pushing with duct tape and favors. For the first time in a long time, people started asking, "What's the right way to do this?" instead of, "What can we get away with?" 2 weeks later, I was called back into another room. This one had a different feel. Less interrogation, more negotiation, but not the kind Parker had tried. The head of HR, someone from legal, and the compliance lead sat across from me. "Mark," the legal rep began, "we've completed the preliminary phase of our review. I'll be candid with you. Your documentation and testimony have been extremely helpful." I didn't say "you're welcome." I didn't say "you're late." I just nodded. "We recognize," she went on, "that some of the decisions made over the years placed you in a compromised position. We also recognize the value of your service here. With that in mind, the company would like to make you an offer." They slid a new packet of papers across the table. This time there were no cute slides, no cake, just numbers, clear, honest numbers, full salary for the next year, extended health coverage, a lump sum reflecting the overtime they'd never logged, but had finally admitted existed, a letter of recognition that wasn't just a template with my name dropped in. "And," she added, "there is no requirement that you characterize this as retirement if you choose not to. You can stay on if you wish in an adjusted role once this is all settled, or you can walk away now with this agreement." It should have felt like vindication. It didn't. It felt like the ground finally stopping its slow, constant tilt. I picked up the packet, flipped through the pages, and realized something I probably should have seen years ago. I'd been saving people who never wanted saving, helping systems that only valued me as long as I held still. "I appreciate the offer," I said, "truly, but I won't be staying." The HR head looked at me. "Are you sure? After everything?" "That's exactly why," I said. "I don't want to spend whatever time I have left teaching people to be decent when they only listen under threat." There was a quiet sort of respect in the room then. the kind that doesn't ask for more. I signed the papers. Word spread like it always does. Not the details, but enough. Parker resigned before the final report came out. A couple of his allies in management found themselves reassigned sideways into roles with no real power. Some of the younger staff suddenly discovered a spine when it came to overtime forms and safety protocols. Funny how that happens when they realize someone somewhere is actually watching. As for the people who'd watched me in that conference room, waiting to see if I'd break, some of them stopped by my desk in the last week. "Hey, Mark, I'm sorry about how that meeting went." I should have said something. "You didn't deserve that." I believed some of them, not all, but I accepted each apology the same way, with a nod, a small smile, and no promise to remember it forever. Their guilt was theirs. My peace was mine. On my last day, there was no party, no mandatory gathering, no email blast with a template subject line. I handed in my badge, cleared the last of my things from the drawer, 3 pens, a stapler that only jammed when you were in a hurry, that unsigned card from my celebration. I left the card on the desk when I walked away. In the parking lot, Jenna caught up with me one more time. "Do you ever regret not leaving sooner?" she asked. I thought about it, about the long nights, the missed dinners, the way I'd worn my loyalty like armor, only to find out it was a costume. "No," I said. "I regret not drawing the line sooner, but I don't regret being the one who finally drew it." She nodded, eyes bright. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Sleep in? Fix my own sink instead of everyone else's? Maybe say yes to things that aren't emergencies?" She laughed softly. "You'll be missed." "I'll be remembered," I corrected. "That's enough." I got in my car. The building looked smaller in the rearview mirror than it had in my head all those years. Just bricks and glass and doors. Not a temple. Not a home. Just a place I'd given too much to, for too long. In the weeks that followed, my days rearranged themselves. Mornings with real coffee instead of break-room sludge. Long walks without a phone buzzing in my pocket. A call from an old colleague at a different company asking if I'd be willing to consult. Part-time, on my terms, with a contract that spelled things out in plain language. I said I'd think about it. Not because I was playing hard to get, but because I finally had the luxury of deciding what I wanted instead of what I could tolerate. Sometimes news still reaches me. "Did you hear what happened to that project Parker pushed? They're still untangling the mess from those shortcuts. People are a lot more careful with signatures now." I listen, then I go back to whatever I was doing. A book, a walk, repairing a loose board on my own porch instead of someone else's floor. They thought my 40th anniversary was the end of my story. The big moment. The closing chapter. It wasn't. That room, that cake, that folder, they were just the last page of a book I finally put down. The real story started the moment I stopped letting other people write over my name. I don't have a plaque on a wall. I don't need one. I have something better. A line I didn't cross, finally drawn in ink instead of pencil. And when I look back at that week, at the whispers, the fake smiles, the something big is coming, I don't hear a threat anymore. I hear a promise I made to myself, standing in that doorway with a folder in my hand and 40 years behind me. I will not stay where my silence is the price of their comfort.